I have a question for you. I'd say it was a simple question. And in terms of the words that make it up, it is. But the meaning of those words, the weight of them, the implication of them, is anything but simple. It may just be the hardest question we'll ever have to answer. It's proven hard for me. The question, it is this: how do you live unafraid of broken things? I can only speak from the struggles I've known firsthand, from the pain I've experienced in my own life. But even a partial list of my broken things can feel overwhelming, as broken things always really do. A broken heart, a broken mind, a broken childhood, a broken adulthood. All of us have suffered broken friendships, relationships, broken promises, broken faith. How are we to live our one broken life? Can we learn to live unafraid of broken things? Would we be willing to walk that path, that way? If we knew what it would cost us, would we sign up for the broken way? My dad had told me this once. For a seed to come fully into its own, it must become wholly undone. The shell must break open, he'd said. Its insides must come out, and everything must change. If you didn't understand what growth looks like, you might mistake it for complete destruction. And my mind goes to those verses from John 12. Jesus is anointed at Bethany. He makes his triumphant entry on a donkey's back, and then there's this. Before his troubled disciples, he predicts his agonizing death. Truly, truly, I tell you, he says to them that day, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a seed. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loves his life will lose it, but whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. The seed breaks to give us the wheat. The soil breaks to give us the crop. The sky breaks to give us the rain. The wheat breaks to give us the bread. And the bread breaks to give us the feast. There was once even an alabaster jar that broke to give him all the glory. Which all begs this question: is there a nobler reason for why we break? Why our lives and everything in them so easily breaks? Could it be that we too must fall to the ground, break and die, to ever bear much fruit? I know. Who wants to hear that? When I was 18, with scars across my wrists, scars I myself had put there, I heard a pastor tell a whole congregation that he had once lived next to a loony bin. I'd looked at the floor when everyone had sat there and laughed. They didn't know how I'd left my only mama behind locked doors of psychiatric wards more than a few times. I'd let the blood drain from my face when I wanted to stand up and reach through all this fracturing fear and say, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Sitting there in a church full of folks laughing at brokenness, keeping their aloof distance from brokenness, I wanted to stand up and say, when the church isn't for the suffering and broken, then the church isn't for Christ. Because Jesus, with his pierced side, is always on the side of the broken. Jesus always moves into the places that are moved with grief. Jesus always seeks out where suffering is. That's where Jesus stays. The wound in his side proves that Jesus is always on the side of the suffering, the wounded, the busted, the broken. I wanted them to talk about that. The real Jesus turns to our denials and dismissals, our questioning of the victim, our questions of why this sickness, why this brokenness, why this darkness, and says there in the book of John, you're asking the wrong question. You're looking for someone to blame. There is no such cause and effect here. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. But I know that before we, as the church, can do anything, I, as the church, must do something. Despite my fear and my ongoing struggle with anxiety, I must trust Jesus to redeem the broken in me. Trust that his good brokenness, and he was broken for good, will somehow heal all the bad brokenness. A package arrived in the mail with 3 simple words announcing it. Open me carefully, as if it could be a soul. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but I had to know what's inside and who is it from. I reached for scissors, sliced the tape, unswaddled the tissue-papered goods. It's from Peru, a friend's handwriting tells me. Saw it and thought of you. Red clay peeks out. An 8-inch base. I unwrap slowly, carefully, to find 13 small kneeled sculptures having positioned themselves evenly all around. It's the Last Supper, the great story. Bent Jesus before his disciples, each of them with cup and loaf in hand. And I look closer. Where are Jesus' hands? The Savior's hands are not where they should be. Having been snapped off by postal slams, I see them there at his feet, just lying there, which is when I know that the base is all busted up too. A few of the disciples' cups are rolling around, totally free. The jug in front of the scene is knocked over. Jesus' blood now really poured out. And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them. The words of Luke 22, verse 19. He gave thanks. In the original language, it's that single word, Eucharisteo. Charis, grace. Jesus saw the bread as grace. Jesus saw his body as grace. He saw it all as grace. And he was compelled to then say, thanks. Thank you for the brokenness. Thank you for the snapped off parts. Thank you for joy rising every time I go gratitude's way. I hold a broken Last Supper in front of me, a Jesus with broken hands. And what did Jesus do after he gave thanks? He broke and he gave. Eucharisteo precedes the miracle. How many times have I said that before? In his last hours, in his abandonment, Jesus doesn't try to shield himself against the rejection. No. He breaks the bad brokenness with his good brokenness and lives into givenness. What else is the great giver to do? I wonder if in shattered places, with broken people, we are most near the broken heart of Christ when we believe this mystery of resurrection from death, the mystery of abundance from brokenness, I move the broken pieces of the Last Supper closer together. Why are we afraid of broken things? I can think of 1,000 raw reasons. Why are we afraid of suffering? What if we trusted that there is such meaning in our brokenness that God Himself is willing to experience it with us? Christ Himself has entered our suffering with us. He is there in that broken down space. Isn't this the quantum physics of God? That our broken heart always splits God's in two. That we never are broken alone. That we never cry alone. Wounds can be openings to the beauty in us. Our weaknesses can be a container for God's glory. If only we would remember the companionship, the comfort, the cross. My family and I returned home from a Sunday service, from the breaking of bread, the thick intimacy of exchange. And there on the table next to my beautiful, busted-up Peruvian Lord's Supper laid a black pen. I picked up the pen, and I turned my wrist over. On a whim or a conviction, I wrote it on my wrist, let it bleed like a vow right there into the thin white skin. One little black cross. I am His, and He is mine. One black cross across the wrist. The cross that rewrites, that reunites, that reforms everything. That covers bad brokenness with good. The broken hands of Jesus lay there on the buffet beside the clay Lord's Supper. I pick them up, turn them over. His hands holding my brokenness. His life making my bad brokenness good. His cross there on my wrist. I'm the woman who had a number once. A number I'd been dared to, 1,000. I'd counted 1,000 gifts, 1,000 common grace blessings. More, maybe close to 10,000 gifts now. Eucharisteo, 5 years of living thanks, of counting and giving thanks for 1,000 everyday gifts, of struggling, wrestling, determining, miserably failing, and then purposing again to take everything as grace, gift, charis. Give Him thanks for it, Eucharisteo, and therein is joy in Him, Kara. So many entries on my list. So many entries never penned. What didn't make the list? The failures. The secrets this woman didn't know how to speak. The sins, hidden like black mold growing up the side of her soul. The silent suffering, the crumbling foundation, the staggering sense that I'd lost something that I would never find again. All those appearances of my machete tongue tearing a gory strip off my kids' backsides. The guarded walls I erected, keeping even my closest friends out. The self-preservation, the bent toward self-destruction, the torrid affair with guilt, the stiff-necked moments. I could go on, you know. But didn't they deserve a place there on that list of gratefulnesses, even right at the top? How could I have lived a life of gratitude without also embracing the fearsome truth that my earthly path will always be paved with pain? To join Christ in his suffering is to recognize that our brokenness, insomuch as it connects us to the brokenness of him, is a gift, a catalyst for gratitude, cracked blessings, which lead to communion with him. Shalom, our daughter, comes with her heart cut right out. She brings the paper heart and this roll of tape and asks, "Will you do it, Mama? I can't make it work." And she holds out a roll of mangled Scotch tape. "What are you trying to do?" I asked her. "Tape the heart to the wall?" "I just want the heart taped to me. Right here," she tells me, fingers staccato off her chest. I'm on my knees in front of her, half smiling, looking up into her face, my thumb smoothing the tape line of this exposed heart, wondering what this is all about. That very morning, we talked about the importance of it all, of giving love to others instead of keeping it to ourselves. Big, bloated words, my bold and brilliant theories on life. And now here she is, a walking demonstration of my breakfast time lecturette. She cups my face with her hands. A role reversal from the postures we usually assume. And she says, "We need to tape hearts right to us, Mama, so we always know." She strokes my cheek. "So we always know his love is around us everywhere." She wants to wear a heart right across her middle so she never forgets. God has not forgotten you. God has not abandoned you. God's love is around us everywhere. The wound in his side proves that Jesus is always on the side of the suffering, the wounded, the busted, the broken. Our brokenness connects us to Jesus' brokenness. Cracked blessings, gratitude. When you and I catch sight of these things, we do more than watch for signs of that love, that divine connection in the world. We become that longed-for sign. I never want her to stop holding me. Is that what real love feels like? Being slightly crushed by someone who loves you and finding yourself put back together into wholeness, into all rightness, into peace. Peace. Shalom. My sweet Shalom, girl of peace. She had looked down, smoothed out her paper heart, her sign of God's love right there on her little shirt. And this is what happened. What always happens. In the protection of the heart tore. Her perfect heart, now broken, ripped right down the center, right where she tried to smooth everything out to make her heart okay. I swallow hard. How in the world do you live with your one broken heart? Her wide eyes now asking it. And as I wait for her eyes to brim over, she looks deeply into mine and says, "It's all okay. Maybe the love gets in easier where the hearts broke open. Maybe our hearts are made to be broken so they can learn to let the love in." God sympathizes with our brokenness. And because of this, we can trust. We trust him, Redeemer of all that is broken, by transforming it into good.